I'm Alex Dykes, and this is the 2013 Lexus RX 350 F Sport. Lexus has been trying to inject a little bit of sporty flavor into their lineup with the addition of these F Sport trims. You'll also find them on the IS, the GS, and the LS sedans, of course. But the interesting thing about this RX F Sport is it's the first front-wheel drive biased F Sport vehicle from Lexus, because of course the RX is sort of more or less loosely based on the Lexus ES and the Toyota Camry and the Toyota Avalon platforms. So that means we have a transverse mounted engine up front and front wheel drive in the regular RX 350, although all the F Sport models are all-wheel drive. Let's take a look. F Sport is to Lexus what M Sport is to BMW. That means that this is not really a full-on performance upgrade for this vehicle because there are very few drivetrain changes. What we really mostly have are styling changes. So instead of the vertical or horizontal grills that you get in typical Lexuses, the F Sport trims get this sort of squiggle treatment from Lexus. I find this the most attractive F Sport grille so far. The Lexus IS is just a tiny bit too bold because the squiggles extend all the way through this sort of impact portion of the bumper, all the way from the air dam all the way to the grille, and I think that's just a bit too much. I really like the way that this particular grille looks. No sporting package would be complete without different rubber, and we get that in the RX F Sport as well, along with standard 19-inch wheels. This wheel size is optional on the regular RX 350, although these particular wheels are exclusive to the F Sport model. The only unfortunate problem is that the 235 with rubber doesn't change, so the regular RX 350 really is handling limited by the 235 with rubber, and although they do change the brand of tire for the F Sport, the size remains the same. F Sport doesn't mean the same thing from one Lexus vehicle to the other. So while some Lexus vehicles with the F Sport package may get upgraded brakes, that's not happening here in the RX F Sport. Instead, we get the same front and rear brakes that you'd expect in the regular RX 350, which is not necessarily that bad of a thing. However, this vehicle does weigh about 4,500 pounds, and if you're doing panic stops back to back, or you're really abusing your vehicle on that winding mountain road, then these brakes can overheat and start to fade. However, again, we only have 235 with tires front and rear, so it's not like you're going to really be doing that much mountain carving. The RX 350 was last completely redesigned in 2009 and refreshed in 2012, so the F Sport is really based on that 2012 refresh. So the side profile is very familiar to you if you've had an RX before. We still have that drastically sloping rear profile because, of course, this is a 5-seater crossover, not a 7-seater crossover. So if you look and compare this to something like the Acura MDX, it has more of an overall sort of egg shape on the side because, of course, we don't have to have room for the 6th and 7th passengers. Overall, I find the styling of the Lexus RX 350 F Sport quite dramatic and quite elegant in a very good sort of way. I think it's one of the most attractive entries in this segment. And now is really the time to talk about that segment and the competition, because of course you can't really include the Mercedes ML or the BMW X5 or X3, things like that, in competition with the RX 350, and that's primarily because of the drivetrain as well as the price tag. Again, we only have a 3.5-liter V6 engine in this car. We're going to take a look at that in a bit, but that's the only engine that's available, and the RX 350 does of course come as a front-wheel drive only vehicle. When you compare that to like vehicles, you really end up with just the Lincoln MKX, the Cadillac SRX, and the Volvo XC60. We can't really include the Acura MDX because it's a 7-passenger front-wheel drive biased vehicle, and of course the brand is a little bit different as well. But styling-wise, I will include the MDX because I find the Acura to be a fairly terrible jumble of shapes. I'm really not sure what was trying to go on with that vehicle up front, but I find it decidedly unattractive. In contrast, I find the Cadillac SRX to be all the right aggressive shapes in all the right places. I think the SRX is probably the most attractive vehicle in an aggressive sort of way in this particular segment. The Volvo XC60 is elegant and demure, but in sort of a Birkenstock kind of way. And I'm really not clear what Lincoln is trying with the new nose on the MKX. I like the rest of the MKX, but that nose just isn't doing it for me. There's not a whole lot to see under the hood of the F Sport, and that's because of all these sound deadening panels. The F Sport only comes, however, with the 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6 engine, which produces 278 horsepower. If you want 295 horsepower, you have to opt for the RX Hybrid, but then you can't get the F Sport handling and suspension modifications on that hybrid model. What is different about the RX 350 F Sport and the regular RX 350 is actually over here under all these sound deadening panels where you can't see anything at all, and that's an all-new 8-speed automatic transmission. All the regular RX 350s get the old 6-speed automatic transmission, and this particular vehicle gets that new 8-speed. Now the F Sport also comes only with all-wheel drive. There's no front-wheel drive version of the F Sport available, so if you want front-wheel drive, then again you have to go for the regular RX 350. The extra 2 speeds on this transmission, however, make the RX 350 F Sport get the same highway mileage as the front-wheel drive RX 350. It's about 2 miles per gallon better than the 6-speed RX 350. Because this is a Lexus, we do have plenty of wood trim in this cabin. We of course get dark stained wood in this RX F Sport because dark stained wood means sporty, while red wood means luxury, I guess. In comparison to the MKX and the SRX, I think that the RX is just a little bit lower in terms of parts quality. We do have a bit more hard plastic that's within easy reach of the driver, and I think that this dashboard doesn't look quite as nice as the newer injection molded dashboards that are used in the SRX and the MKX. I find that the Volvo XC60 is just different in many ways. I think that there are still some hard plastics in reach of the driver, but the styling is so different from the SRX and the RX and the MKX that it's difficult to make a direct comparison. It's really going for that Swedish modern look rather than this more modern mainstream vehicle that Cadillac, Lincoln, and Lexus are all going for here. So it's really more of a personal preference. I think that in this particular segment, the XC60 still wins my interior preference, but that's mainly because of the seat. Although I do find this Lexus RX front seat fairly comfortable, I don't find it quite as adjustable in terms of its motion as compared to that Volvo seat, although we do get power adjustable lumbar support in both the driver and the front passenger seat, and we get a power tilt telescoping steering column with a fairly decent range of motion in the Lexus. The RX F Sport gets a unique F Sport steering wheel, of course. There's not a whole lot of change in terms of the shape of the wheel, but we do get perforated leather on the sides, and of course we have these paddle shifters on the back of the steering wheel. I really seem to prefer paddles on the back of the steering wheel, but most of our Facebook fans seem to prefer them located on the column, so keep that in mind if you're shopping for the RX F Sport. Now, of course, you can use those paddles whether you're in drive or whether you're in the manual mode, as indicated by the shifter that's in the center console here. Now, if you're in manual mode, the car will not downshift for you automatically. You have to do that with these paddles, and the transmission does rev match your downshifts, which I really appreciate. Rear seat comfort in the RX 350 is fairly good, but like most mid-sized SUVs, these rear seats are a little bit close to the floor. So if you regularly carry kids in the rear, that's not so much of a problem. In fact, they'd probably prefer that. But if you regularly carry adults, that is something to keep in mind. I do, however, have a decent amount of legroom and several inches of headroom left, and I'm 6 feet tall, and this front seat is adjusted for me. All F Sport models come with a padded center armrest with a little storage cubby here, as well as cup holders that can carry very large drink sizes from most fast food restaurants. The benefit for the RX for not having a rear-wheel drive biased platform, of course, is that there's no transmission underneath this center console. It's completely up front there, and that means that they were able to put the drive shaft to the rear very low in the vehicle, so there's literally no hump in this vehicle. Seriously, the floor just goes right from the left side of the rear passenger area to the right side of the rear passenger area. That means that carrying 3 adults in the rear is something that can be done in the RX 350. Now, this is a fairly wide vehicle, so you can fit, several adult guys back here. It's not exactly going to be comfortable, but it's totally possible. I definitely have enough legroom here, and I have several inches of headroom left in this middle seat as well. The RX F Sport scores 8 out of 10 points in our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index because this is a fairly large cargo area. It's the largest in this quartet of mid-sized luxury SUVs. Now, thanks to the sloping rear profile, however, it's difficult to fit large square items in the back of your RX 350. That is something to keep in mind because of the way that this opening is shaped here. It has a definite huge slant to it. So the only area that you could stick larger, taller items is right back here by these rear seats. Of course, the rear seats in the RX 350 do fold, enlarging that cargo area again to the largest cargo area available in this particular segment. Everything in this trunk is finished very nicely, and of course we get a power trunk hatch, which I always like. Let's take a look at Lexus Remote Touch, and that's what Lexus is calling this joystick in the center console. Now, while there are a few Lexus models that do not use this input method at this point, we're told by Lexus that pretty much everything will be using this joystick affair at some point. Now, it operates just like a joystick, as I said. You move this little affair around, and it moves the cursor around on the screen. We have a few direct access buttons here. We have our map, we have our menu button to take you back to the menu screen, and we have a zoom in and out button. If you want to select something on the screen, you move this joystick to that particular option. As you can see, it snaps to the option, and then you just press down to select. Lexus Remote Touch is my least favorite input method for modern infotainment systems, and that makes me a little bit sad because the Lexus touchscreen system, which uses essentially the same software but doesn't use this joystick obviously, instead you just stab the screen, is probably one of my favorite systems, and simply by changing this input method, I find the system is a great deal less intuitive, a great deal harder to use, and quite a bit more distracting when you're out on the road. Let's take a closer look at the infotainment and navigation software. This is essentially the same software that Toyota and Lexus have been using for some time, which is a good thing because it's fairly well developed. A lot of the bugs have been worked out at this point. It's really just an evolution of that same software they've been using for a while, updated to include apps integration with your smartphone, as well as to use this Lexus Remote Touch joystick. Again, use the joystick to wiggle around the screen and select the option in the menu. We have our navigation destination. On this particular screen, we could use our app integration if our app had been registered with Lexus Inform. Ours hasn't, so we can't show you that. But you would be able to use services like OpenTable, Bing, Pandora, media streaming, etc. We have our fuel consumption over here, which gives our Lexus and Toyota typical past record and current record for our fuel economy. We have traffic incidents. This pulls your traffic data from XM, so you do need to have an XM subscription in order for that to work. Lexus Insider allows you to have sort of snippets on how to use features of your Lexus. These services are also downloaded via XM, so you do need XM data services for that to work. We of course get XM fuel prices, XM Sports, XM Stocks, XM Nav Weather as well. Again, data services are required for all of those. We have our system options there in setup. On radio, we have access to HD radio, XM satellite radio, as well as AM and FM radio in this particular system. To use the USB, iPod, Bluetooth, or CD interfaces, you can either arrow over using this little arrow, or you can hit the direct access media button on the dashboard. We don't have anything in this DVD player, but if we did, you'd see that option there. It is a single slot CD DVD player if you choose the Mark Levinson sound system, which is about a $1,000 option in our F Sport, or it's a 6-disc changer if you don't go for that option. The iPod and USB interface is fully featured. As you can see, it displays full album art as well as full album information, song information, etc. Our album art is loading there, it's why it's a little wheel. You have full access to your iPod or your USB device. You can browse it using this interface. Now this interface caches the information from your USB or your iDevice and displays it on the screen, so it's fairly snappy to interact with. Also new for this year, we now have voice commands, so you can actually search for particular songs or artists using the voice commands in this system.
After the beep, say a shortcut menu command. Say help at any time for additional instructions.
Play music.
Play music. Say a music command.
Now if we pause here for just a second, you can see that we have play artist, play album, but play song was not an available option. And that's because my music library is too big. So if you have over 3,500 songs or so, you cannot voice command songs like you would be able to in Cadillac Q or Ford's My Ford Touch. Now we also have, here we have our sound options, so you can change your DSP settings. This is the Mark Levinson sound system again, so we do have a 7-channel surround sound system with a subwoofer in this particular model. Click over to Bluetooth audio. You get essentially the same information on Bluetooth audio once your player is connected that you do in the interface, the wired interface, except that you cannot browse your device, of course. You would actually have to direct access your device with this particular system. Now, speaking of devices on this system is capable of providing high power charging for iPods, iPads, or other high drain devices like modern tablets, etc. Going back to the main menu, you'll notice there's a climate option, and that's because there are certain climate control functions that you can only do in this software interface, most notably enabling or disabling dual zone climate control in this particular model. If we go back and select the next option, which is phone, we have our fairly standard Bluetooth phone interface. The one difference is there's this message option over here. My iPhone does not support this, but if you had an Android phone or another phone that supported text message assistant via this system, the system would be able to read your text messages to you and respond with pre-canned messages from the system. Compared to Cadillac Q, this system is an awful lot more reliable. It's also more reliable than Ford MyTouch. However, the interface is just not as easy to use or as easy to understand as my Ford Touch or as Cadillac Q or even Volvo Sensus system, which is a little bit more convoluted than your average German or American system because it does use a knob, but it's not quite the same as iDrive. Overall, this definitely rates at the bottom of the pack in terms of user friendliness, pretty much just because of that joystick. In terms of feature functionality, it's one notch below Cadillac Q and one notch below my Ford Touch, because although it does have app integration and you can voice command your music library, it does have some limitations. So again, if your music library is too large, you can't command certain songs, and that's not a limitation in Cadillac's Q or My Ford Touch. Volvo's Sensa system does not offer that same level of voice commandability at this moment, so it's one notch above the Volvo system, but definitely a notch below the Ford and the General Motors systems. Because the only drivetrain difference between the RX 350 and the RX 350 F Sport is this 8-speed automatic transmission, there isn't a whole lot of performance difference between the two. In our 0 to 60 tests, we achieved 60 in this model in around 6.5 seconds, which is only about 0.2 of a second faster than that RX 350 with the 6-speed automatic transmission. Putting an 8-speed automatic transmission in the F Sport model of the RX is kind of an interesting move for Lexus, because the GS model supposedly didn't have Lexus's 8-speed automatic transmission, instead favoring the 6-speed automatic because it was quote-unquote sportier. Just like Jaguar issued the 8-speed ZF transmission for the 6-speed automatic for quite some time because they claimed it was too many gears to hunt through. And that's definitely true with this RX F Sport because there are quite a lot of gears to be shifting through for this engine. However, the performance benefit of having those closer ratios definitely is worth the hunting because this is a naturally aspirated engine and the torque curve really isn't that broad. The cross dampers and other tweaks that Lexus made to the RX suspension for F Sport duty have really improved the feel of the RX out on the road, but they've done very little for absolute grip, because instead of giving the RX wider tires, all that Lexus really did was swap out the slightly less grippy compound in the all-season tires used by the regular RX 350 for slightly grippier all-season tires in this RX F Sport. It means we still have 235 with tires up front, which is still among the smallest in this relatively small group of competitors that would be the Cadillac SRX, the Lincoln MKX, and of course the Volvo XC60. With the lowest horsepower in this group and the highest curb weight, I hadn't really expected high performance numbers of the RX F Sport, and of course it didn't deliver those. But I had expected a slightly more polished ride and a bit more lateral grip than the RX F Sport really delivers. Again, that's down to those narrow tires. But that does mean that this comes in dead last in this group of four, again the Volvo, the Cadillac, and the Lincoln, because the Cadillac and the Lincoln, even though they don't have a turbocharged engine like the Volvo, still provide more power. They're lighter and they have wider tires available in certain option packages, which are just not available on this RX F Sport. Don't get me wrong, the RX 350 is not a wet noodle out on the road. It's not sloppy, it's not, going to head for the bushes and run into a tree at the first sign of a curve. Unfortunately, it's all down to that rubber choice, because if you look at the wheel wells in this vehicle, there certainly was enough room to provide for wider wheels and wider tires in this particular vehicle with, of course, grippier rubber. And I really think that that was an unfortunate twist in Lexus's product planning division to not take that opportunity and give this car something like 255, 265 with tires, which would seriously have improved the handling in this vehicle. The suspension is definitely up to the task, and with these cross strut arrangements in this vehicle, it really helps dampen the chassis flex that's inherent in the regular RX to a point where I really think that wider tires would have been a good move in this vehicle. It's definitely something you can rectify aftermarket. It's just a shame that Lexus chose not to do that from the factory. The RX 350 starts just over $39,000, and the F Sport package will add about $6,200 to the price of your RX 350. Now, if you were already planning to get all-wheel drive and a number of other options, then the F Sport package makes a lot of sense because it's a decent value. You get these rails on the top, you get the 8-speed automatic transmission, of course, you get the contrasting stitching, the black headliner, you get standard folding mirrors, you get the standard rain sense wipers, stiffer springs, the retuned dampers. Of course, you get the cross dampers in this particular suspension as well, and basically what they do is they add sort of a strut tower brace from the left and right strut towers, front and rear, and then they put a damper in between the two to help settle the suspension a bit. So it's not too bad of a deal. You also get the custom wheels and you get some different rubber compared to the regular RX 350. However, it is about $2,000 to $3,000 more expensive than any of the competitors, and you have to keep in mind that that Volvo XC60 does have a great deal more power. Now, the RX 350 is larger than its competitors. I mean, it's a decent amount bigger both in length and width. So there's also a bit more storage room back here. It's almost 10 cubic feet more cargo room in the RX 350 than any of the other competitors. However, all the competition drives better and is faster than this RX 350. So my personal ranking would put the XC60 T6 with the Polestar 325 horsepower upgrade pack at the top of the pile, followed by the Cadillac SRX, followed by the Lincoln MKX, and then this RX 350 F Sport at the bottom of the pile. However, Lexus does have a reputation for impeccable reliability and excellent dealer service, so if those things matter more to you, then that really could turn that order upside down for you. That's been our quick look at the 2013 RX 350 F Sport, so go ahead and like us on Facebook, go ahead and check out thetruthaboutcars.com and tell us what you think.